Nathan has said this. I'd like to know your guys' thoughts on the overall cost of football for fans. Tickets, travel, food, shirts, etc. I'm being slowly priced out of football and worry I'll not be able to take my little boy in a year or so when he's old enough. Football is the working man's game, yet the working man is struggling to attend games. How do we get control of this staggering rise in costs across the board?
I should also say it's not just the working man's game.
Working person.
Working person.
Yes,
game,
indeed.
exactly.
Yeah, but fine. It's a common phrase which is now outdated.
I don't think it's acceptable.
Okay, fine. Nathan, you've...
We're going to move on to the next question.
No, but
it's a good question.
This has been a question, sadly, that's been relevant year upon year upon year in football.
And we make no apology for continually returning to it, I think.
Because it's still a concern for a lot of people.
You've got to be on the right side of history.
Worse than ever in this coming season.
At the top, in the top flight, certainly. I think it's slightly different in the Football League, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's still expensive.
It is still expensive, but I think in the Premier League, that's the epicenter of it, isn't it?
It really is.
The reason I'm saying that
is I think why it's a thing in the Premier League is I think it's very expensive to get into AFC Wimbledon.
How much is it?
For example, well, I'm a member, and it cost me £30 to get in.
Right, okay.
A game?
In league.
A game? No, it's a month.
You
go as many times you want in a month. There's no one playing. I'll still whip my money's worth.
This in League Two.
That's crazy.
Now this is slightly different, of course, because Wimbledon operate a different model to everyone else in that there is no one owner to cover the massive losses of the club like there are with 99% of the clubs around. So basically, if we want our club to stay in the league, we have to pay for stuff. And so you have to accept that. The difference is, as you were saying, Luke, I think, in the Premier League, clubs can definitely afford to charge less.
That's the point.
And they know they can.
Well, there's a statistic.
They're making rises that make a massive difference to their fans, but a minimal difference to them.
Well, indeed. I believe some of the... So 17 surviving Premier League clubs from last season announced significant increases to season tickets and matchday pricing this season. Crystal Palace are the only club to freeze prices.
Yeah.
A lot of protests last season at Spurs, Fulham, Liverpool, Wolves, where fans were calling for boycotts. And I believe it's Fulham who... The amount of... The overall gain for them for ticket increases is not even the difference between prize money of finishing 14th and 15th in the Premier League. So that's what you're dealing with.
That's tapping into what Andy's saying.
So I get what you're saying about AFC Wimbledon. That's a bit of a tricky one, but it's a very, very, you could say, unique situation, or very particular situation.
And other clubs in the division do charge a lot of money to get in.
Yeah, so I understand that one can sort of sit here and go, everything's too expensive, and you sound like a bit of a gobshite and you don't really know the detail. But when you're presented with facts like that, you think to yourself, well, come on. And that's why in Friday's preview show yesterday, when we talked about Jim Radcliffe taking away the lunch boxes from some of the staff and so on.
Yeah, making them eat in the toilet.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got
the option of eating in the toilet. Otherwise, they've got that shit room that they've also been provided with.
Yeah.
Actually, when you talk about these things, is some people may think, but it's a bit of a freebie. You can buy your own sandwich. You can, but let's just remember what the club is spending money on and how much money they do have and how much they make. And actually, these things are just a slap in the face for a lot of people. But we're not talking about staff; we're talking about fans.
Well, the reason I said I wanted to lean in the Premier League side of it, and Nathan's question does take into a couple of things that are actually outside of the control of football anyway. But we can come on to that. Is because when I see that Portsmouth, the team I support, go into the Championship, which is one of the best leagues in the world,
it's great,
and the season ticket's £450, about £20 a ticket. I don't think that's bad.
No, that's not bad at all.
I think that's okay actually for what you get in, the entertainment you get in. You go to watch a band, or you go and go to a theatre show or whatever, and obviously Portsmouth's not in London or anywhere near London, so the prices are affected there. I don't think it's quite as bad as all that, but I do think in the Premier League it is the price of everything and the value of nothing, for the reasons, Marcus, you've said as well. There's an overall picture of this as well, which is because Nathan says tickets, travel, food and shirts, etc. There's no reason for the shirts to be as expensive as they are. Absolutely none. There's no reason at all for them to be that expensive. And the travel is because Britain is a whole and has sold its soul completely to like foreign investment. We have no control over things like train ticket prices and all the rest of it. So the whole thing adds up and becomes a very expensive day. I understand that. But the issue is that that really it's quite difficult to say, and it sounds like I'm being quite mean-spirited about football fans, of which I am one, is that the reason it always happens is because people just blithely accept it.
There's that.
And the underpinning of all this is there's no competition in the market, which makes it absolutely imperative that these clubs set lower prices because they know you're not going to go anywhere else. And what's just going to happen is you are going to fade away because you're not going to go anymore because you can't afford it, and someone else is going to come along. And it's very difficult, especially with the big clubs, it's very difficult to understand what can actually be done about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the major issue, isn't it? The fact that you have the feeling that a lot of Premier League clubs would rather get rid of the season ticket holders and be able to just sell their tickets to tourists on the open market because someone will come. And because I guess they're looking at the resale market, which is legalised touting, which has thrived over the last 5 to 10 years.
Also a massive problem.
Yes. And they will think, well, actually, we can earn that money instead. So why wouldn't we do that rather than having to placate season ticket holders? The thing you're forgetting is, or the thing the clubs are forgetting, is the market might, or even from a business perspective, the market might not always be as it is at the moment. And what we found during COVID is without atmosphere in the stadiums, without people in the stadiums, football is shit, even on television.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that clubs are plainly failing to grasp.
They've forgotten it. They've just forgotten it. They remembered it for about a year.
Yes.
After COVID, and they've forgotten again now. Yes,
because the reality is, it's not just about the bodies in the stadium, it's about the atmosphere they create. And it does affect the game. And we saw that during COVID. It affects the tempo of the game, it affects the way the players behave. It is so much part of the televisual spectacle, even if that's all you care about. Now, before we get to the point where we talk about what fans deserve and how they should be treated and the respect that they should be treated with, if you're looking at it in the coldest commercial terms, you're coming very close to killing the golden goose here, because you are looking at a point, say if it is all tourists, it will go back to being another terrible spectacle. Because I think you could look at a team like, look at a club like Borussia Dortmund, for example, who have an 80,000 stadium that they sell out every single week. A huge percentage of that is season ticket holders. And the reason is to keep the soul of it alive, not from even a moral perspective, but to make it something that people want to visit and make it something that people want to watch. It's one of the most obvious commercial principles. It's like selling Prime. You have to stimulate demand by creating quite a small supply.
Yeah, and it's a really good example and a really good point, Andy. And I think that sometimes, again, people don't grasp that. A happy customer is a good customer. And also as well with football, it's often a family thing, as Nathan's talking about here.
Yes.
You want to bring your kids. I mean, look at West Ham. No kids' prices for their first home game against Aston Villa.
That's the problem. That's the real mistake part of it. That's
surely,
the price for everything, the value of nothing.
Exactly,
that is killing the future.
But exactly, Andy, what you're saying is, the basic say, and it is that thing, someone will buy it. But do you not want... that family coming on, they bring their kids, and the kids grow up, and they bring their kids. It's just a no-brainer.
But let me play devil's advocate to Andy and the point he makes about Dortmund there, because I totally understand it. I've been to Dortmund. I get how it works. What the Premier League would presumably say in response to that is they would say, but Borussia Dortmund aren't competing financially with pretty much any team in the Premier League. And if we did what they did, we'd be back there with them. And so Premier League is such a big, powerful entity in the world of football now, for the reason that the demand is so high, because it's such a marketable product. And so if they behaved how Dortmund did, they would presumably, in their view, and I'm not saying I share this view, but they, in their view, would be setting fire to potential revenue and therefore not being able to compete with...
Well, play the big wages and get the big players.
Yeah, or win big trophies, all the rest of it.
But that's a complete red herring, because the fact is, the reason the Premier League can pay bigger wages than everyone else is because it's got a bigger TV deal than everyone else.
Yeah.
It's got a bigger domestic TV deal, and it's got bigger overseas TV deals.
If I'm going to sound crass, that's probably because of, if you think about the influence, the sort of the soft power that Britain generally has with sort of creative stuff and so on. The Premier League is a huge reason for that. And why is that?
Huge.
Because of past and so on.
But the way it all links together is this idea that it's not just that that it's expensive and that they're nickel and diming everyone with no kids tickets and loads of money for replica shirts and scrapping seniors prices. It's not just that. It's the idea that the vast majority of their money comes from TV anyway.
Well, exactly.
And as you said this at the start of all this. So the reason they do, and I'm sorry to make it circular and sorry to beat on about this, because we do come back to this subject quite a lot on this show, and I understand why it's important to keep it front of mind and people should be able to hear about it and talk about it. But the reason they're doing this, it comes down to just one thing, and it's because they can.
Yeah, it's greed.
And that is also, and to bring another kind of input into this, that's also why they're so resistant to an independent regulator.
Yeah,
now, I know the independent regulator in its current form, I don't think has oversight on things like that, because I guess they're commercial enterprises, so it wouldn't really make that much sense. But Richard Masters and his gang, they don't want to go down the road of being, if we let the independent regulator in, it starts to slowly get more and more power. Richard Masters is thinking, the golden goose, the cash cow, this amazing product that he sees it as, is going to have been lost on my watch when I let this happen. So they fiercely resist it at all times. But ultimately, the people who miss out are the other fans. And at the very top level, it's very, very difficult to square the circle, because, as we've already talked about, apart from a fairly nebulous idea from Andy that the idea that the stadium atmosphere would be shit in time if it was all just day trippers, I get that. That's quite abstract though, and would take some time.
I don't think owners would be.
No, I think that started already. It's a bit like Airbnb in tourist cities. I think you'll find.
But Andy, people have been saying that for decades.
But I think the point is that owners don't care. Owners don't care if there's singing in the home section or not. They don't care, really. A lot of them don't care. But I think the point you make, Andy, is actually, I know this is, I'm hardly an economist or anything like that, but if you are offering players, say, 300 grand wages and all that kind of thing, if you say to a player, actually, we're going to offer you 250 grand a week rather than 300 grand, and you do that with a few players, those players aren't going to go, well, sod you, I'm going to sign for, who are you going to sign for?
That's already happening in the transfer market.
Yeah, well, that's already, but who are you going to sign for? This is the thing, the Premier League already are on the top of the hill, other than, Saudi, but that's not going to last, and they haven't been making a splash in this window. It's not sustainable. So the Premier League are already in the position. Just ease off a bit and throw the fans a bone or two, and actually what you'll find is it will become a better place, as Andy said, maybe instantaneously, but you will begin to make it a more enjoyable experience and better. And I don't think they're going to lose out at all. You need a little bit of constraint.
The Premier League needs to be aware of why it is so popular around the world.
Yes.
And the high octaneness of it is a huge, huge part of it. And that's why, even when you could argue the elite players were still going to, the absolute elite players were still going to Real Madrid and Barcelona, if we go back 5-10 years, it's why more people were watching the Premier League, because of the whole package, because of the excitement.
Yep.
You hear less and less players talk about the excitement of the atmosphere in the stadiums now. And so it is already having an effect. We're not talking about having an effect on the future. I think we have to address the other thing that Nathan asked, though. How do we get control of it? Well, I think the answer is only a couple of years ago, and I'm sure we've touched on this before, but I think when you look at how fans came together to block off the Super League, that shows that when there is that unity between English football fans, they can do extraordinary things and they can affect extraordinary change. Now, I think I'm not talking about the Bundesliga as some sort of fan Valhalla, because I don't think it is that. But you do have a situation in which regular stadium going fans are empowered, and they're aware of that power, and they're aware of that collective power on big issues.
And the owners are aware of it.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the crucial bit.
Exactly. And that's why they never got involved in the Super League, by the way. But so whereas if you look at Premier League fans have always been a bit NIMBY about stuff, whereas I think that can slowly change. And again, we don't want to forget that. We want to go back to that idea of what we can collectively do for a collective problem. And we're seeing with these protests at lots of different clubs, and fans of different clubs are aware of that. And I think fans are slowly becoming aware of the fact that this is a situation that is happening at a load of different clubs in a load of different areas in the country, regardless of the economic context. And the economic context is important. Like, if you're being asked 800 quid for a season ticket at Wolves, I was talking to a Wolves fan the other week who was saying, there are actually people in Wolverhampton who would like the team to get relegated so they can afford to go.
Well, indeed, yeah. I mean, by the way,
it's extraudinary.
In mentioning Wolves, they announced ticket price increases of almost 200% on some under 14s tickets.
Unbelievable.
And Jeff Shee said it was vital to increase ticket prices in line with other clubs.
Exactly.
Do you say that to a 13-year-old lad? Yeah, but you got to understand.
It goes back to what Luke was saying.
Yeah.
Like not because we need to, but because we can.
But I think the Super League example that's always used is a bit of a red herring, though, because the Super League represented an existential threat to the entirety of the game in this country.
But this is an existential threat to your fandom,
but fans don't see it that way.
And that's the problem. I
think a lot of fans are beginning to see it.
I think the point about the Super League is it's not maybe the details of it. It's the fact that when the fans came together, they can do something. And I think that's what you need.
Because it affected all of them.
Yeah, indeed. And
this affects all of them.
But Andy,
if your club's not doing it today, they'll be doing it tomorrow.
But they don't see it like that.
Yeah, I know, but you need to get them to see it like that.
I think people are starting to see it like that.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. With regards to some of the other details that Nathan said about the cost of shirts, I mean, it's about £80 now for.
Well, there's no excuse for that. I mean, that's
all you need to
do.
Stop buying shirts. You can still go to the football. Stop buying shirts.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, but it's easy to say that when your kid's old enough to want one.
Yeah, fine. We'll get a knockoff one then.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
no,
but that's. I'm afraid that is massively going to increase that. So
yeah,
anyway.
Of course it is. Yeah, that might be a situation that sorts itself out over time.
Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody. Let's take a break. Because that's a serious one, and in the second half we got some good football chat. Don't worry about that, but something a little bit more light-hearted as well. Welcome back to the Football Ramble mailbag, everybody. Luke, you've got a question from Stuart on Instagram.
He says, "What's the biggest false dawn in football?" For me, it's Andrei Shevchenko scoring in the Community Shield.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, for Chelsea, obviously.
I've got a similar one to that. There's loads of examples of managers starting their tenure at clubs really positively, that kind of new manager bounce, all that kind of stuff, and it kind of goes to shit. But I'd like to give a mention to Federico Makeda.
Oh, yes!
Remember that one?
Yeah.
April 2009.
Aston Villa.
He came from nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, back then it was a little bit more common for young players to not really be known of. And Ferguson chucked him in off the bench against Aston Villa at Old Trafford. And he scored in stoppage time to win the game 3-2, which basically handed United the title.
It was an important goal, and it's a great goal as well.
He was 17. It was a beautiful turn and finish into the far corner. And we all thought a superstar was born, like there and then.
Yeah.
Almost, I know it sounds mental, but it very much was similar in circumstances, possibly even higher stakes, although not a better goal than when Rooney came on and did it. Right?
I know what you mean. It's that kind of...
And Martin Tyler absolutely lost it. He absolutely lost it.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, I watched it back, and one of the first players to celebrate with him was Johnny Evans, who's still at Old Trafford. So
incredible. Well, he went away.
Yeah, he did, and he came back again.
Yeah.
Well, Federico Makeda went away as well.
He did.
Big time. And that never really happened for him, which is quite sad. And I saw a quote from him when he was asked about his career. He just said, "It hasn't been as good as I hoped," which is quite sad. Even though he has played at professional level, scored goals in different parts of Europe, he's still playing in Turkey now, I think. But it was a super exciting moment.
Yeah, he was.
And it never quite happened for him, sadly. But that was a really big false dawn that I thought of when the question was asked by our friend Stuart.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Would you say Mikhail Forsell was another one of them? Didn't he score a couple of lovely goals early on at Chelsea?
You know, it feels like we're sort of ganging up on Chelsea and strikers here. But the first one I thought of before I even got to the bit of the question where Stuart talked about Shevchenko is Alvaro Morata in his first 3 months in the Premier League, because he scores a load of headed goals and people are like, oh, he's born for this league. And then you quickly realise that he isn't. I mean, again, I don't want to gang up on the same clubs. The one that I really love, and maybe it's because Lucas put the Stretford end in my mind, Michael Knighton, when he was going to take over at Manchester.
This is a bit before my time, really, Andy. You're showing your age here.
This was brilliant. So he'd agreed a deal to take over Manchester United. Turned out that he didn't have the money. Yeah. But anyway, he comes out at Old Trafford on the first day of the season. This would be, I think, 89.
It's late 80s, yeah.
And he's wearing Manchester United training top and shorts, mustachioed man, does a load of keepy uppies, smashes it into the back of the net and clenches
the fans
his
are loving
fist
it as well
in front of the Stretford end. And then they go and beat a really quite good Arsenal team 4-1, and Neil Webb scores a perler from outside the box, and you think, okay, United are really going somewhere now. And then it turns out he doesn't have the money to buy the club.
The absolute chutzpah. Interestingly, his I forget what relation it is, but my old Saturday team in Edinburgh, the one of the dads who ran it was related to him, or maybe through marriage or whatever, and he owned Carlisle United, and we used to play in a Carlisle United kit because of that.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. Fourth dawn from me, El Hadj Diouf.
What, when he spat in someone's face?
No. When
Aaron Dezou's face, I think, Pompey player.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I think so it was.
And
yeah.
a Celtic
He'd get nicked for that these days, wouldn't he?
He probably would, yeah. Well, by Aaron Dezou.
Yeah.
He, on his first game at Anfield, signed after Senegal had a really good World Cup.
2002, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and there was interest in it. And
Signed
Liverpool,
Salif Diao at the same time, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. And Liverpool, 2000, just before that, maybe finished second in the league. They'd won a few trophies around that time as well. And they'd signed this guy, and it was really exciting because, again, it's not pre-internet, but sort of, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was kind of, yeah.
And off the back of an exciting World Cup, this Senegalese side had done well. They'd turned heads. He was one of their big players. Liverpool had got him. It was like, could they kick on and win the league? He scores 2 goals in his first game at Anfield.
Yeah.
And I think the next goal came a long time after. And of course, what a different player he was after that. He was seen as, this guy's a goal scorer. He's a proper...
But he was never a goal scorer after that, really, was he?
No, not at all. And then, as you say, the spitting incidents and all that
He was also
stuff.
seen as a bit of a fucking terrible character.
Yeah, exactly. So that was like, it was night and day.
Apparently he scored 3 league goals in 55 games for Liverpool. 3 in 55.
Wow.
Amazing.
How about that?
Wow.
Yeah, not in a good way.
Yeah.
We've got one here from Sam on Instagram. Would you be in favour of a transfer news embargo with no announcements till match day? Whereas I like the surprise element, I'm going to have to say, Sam, no.
Getting up early, just flicking on the telly. Right, who we got?
Yeah, but it's partly your job, though, Andy.
That's exactly why I'm saying.
Yeah,
no.
but if you were much younger before you were employed and all that, there is something about, like, obviously it's impossible to do nowadays. Of course.
We used to have to refresh the teletext page and the CFAX page.
Yeah,
but imagine that though on match days. If you thought, right, who's our new signing going to be? Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
here he comes.
El Hadj Diouf.
It's El Hadj Diouf.
I met one of my best friends like lurking over like teletext corner in the small portable telly in our library at university.
That's cool.
But it's funny what you were saying about the big reveal markers. I absolutely love that, and I think that's what Sam's getting at. Do you remember when David Beckham had his curtains shaved off?
Yes.
And they were away at Leicester at Filbert Street, Manchester United. He scored a free kick in that.
Obviously.
And he came off the team bus. He had this hat on,
yeah.
and there were rumours that he'd done it, but you didn't find out until he was actually
playing
on the pitch. I mean, imagine if you did that with like a full balaclava.
That'd be on Instagram as soon as he's
like
done
that.
it now, wouldn't it? That's the thing. I remember when I used to go and watch sports at Fratton Park, showing my age now, one of the things I used to do on the way home, because I used to have to get the boat across the ferry, back across the harbour to go back home, and then I'd get the bus.
You took a boat to the football?
Yeah, because I lived
so
on the other side of the
exciting.
harbour, yeah.
They're an island people.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to get the Sportsman on the way home. This pink newspaper that was printed with all the sports results. It had all the local sports results.
In Edinburgh, it was simply just, in Scotland, it was just called The Pink.
Yeah, they had the
Yeah.
pink in the Midlands as well.
But it was printed and it was ready by the time I got back.
Incredible, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to read that for all the information because it sometimes
Get the odd misprint, eh?
you wouldn't even know who'd scored.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have the information available. So I can kind of see how that is a seductive, kind of nostalgic thing to not have these things.
Could you
announced,
imagine,
but-
though, when Portsmouth got, I don't know, Robert Prozinecki or something?
Yeah.
Or Paul Merson or any of these.
That I've read about that. I remember reading about that the first time on the back of the.
Can you imagine
of the
being
evening
down
news,
there
yeah.
and go, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to believe this, former Real Madrid man, Robert Prozinecki, people would lose their minds.
Yeah.
Hey! But then,
They did lose their mind.
yeah, true. Even more so. But it would be a bit damning for that player, though, if the player was unveiled and they went, we wanted the other guy.
Yeah, but you're never going to get. As you've already said, you can't do it these days.
You can't do it, Sam. It's a nice idea. We
Andy
kind of like
Brassel
it.
would never be on TV again, and we cannot stand for that.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to finish with this from Frank on email. Where does Manuel Neuer rank in the all-time great goalkeepers? And was he the first proper sweeper keeper? He retired from international football this week. Of course, just from international football, he'll still be knocking around. I mean, the first proper sweeper keeper, I don't remember Manuel Neuer playing around the time of René Higuita.
Slightly different.
Yeah.
Slightly
Yeah,
different.
Bruce Grobbelaar as well.
Bruce Grobbelaar. So perhaps not the first proper sweeper keeper. But where does he rank among the all-time great goal scorers? That would be
Low, very, very low.
very low
actually.
indeed. Lower than Brad Friedel, certainly. All-time great goalkeepers. He's got to be up there.
Well, I think he is the first. Yeah. I think he's the first proper sweeper keeper in terms of how we interpret the role now.
Modern.
Yeah, you do. I mean, the goalkeeper's role has completely changed, and it changes still now. And Neuer is really the prime mover in that, in my view.
But you're saying like joining in with play and all that.
Yeah,
But I know it's
as
because
part
he's
of a system.
I know because he's a madhead or what, but Higuita was doing that
but
in the 80s, for crying out loud.
Yeah, but
and you can say, but it was insane. No, he was.
Yeah, I mean, again, Grobbelaar, it looks sort of tame, but compared to keepers now, but you've got to look at the context where you could still pick up back passes.
Yeah.
Very different.
But certainly in the modern era, definitely, you'd call him a sweeper keeper and all that. But I think the ranking him among the all-time great goalkeepers, absolutely. To the point of, I think that nowadays, I think people kind of forget about him as a great goalkeeper. Whereas someone like Gigi Buffon, even when he was playing in his 40s, people, Gigi Buffon, what a man, he's the guy and all that. Whereas I think Neuer deserves that, but maybe hasn't quite got it as much as, say, Buffon.
Yeah, I think probably because of the few injuries in recent seasons as well. That's been a thing, especially the skiing injury, which was ridiculous, obviously. But I think what makes Neuer such a groundbreaker is that you see a lot of goalkeepers that fall between eras, and we were talking in Friday's show about David De Gea, for example, and how he got caught out of time, really, in terms of the goalkeeper. He's a fantastic goalkeeper, but maybe not suitable for a lot of top clubs nowadays. Whereas Neuer sort of defines his own space because he was able to come out and play whilst not being the same sort of passer of the ball as, say, Ederson or Lucas Perry or this like new wave of Brazilian goalkeepers, for example. His just willingness to come out and be tidy on the ball quite a long way from goal. Again, maybe that only happens if you play for Bayern, although he did do it for Germany as well. But he did that without sacrificing any of the traditional goalkeeper elements. He's an exceptional command of his area. He's an unbelievable shot stopper. There's so much else to him.
That passing ability, by the way, I mean, we saw that at Arsenal last season when they drew, what was it, 2-2 at the Emirates, where to start the move off, he flicks the ball up and then volleys the ball over. I forget which Arsenal player's head it was. It kind of went under the radar. Do you think, though, the fact that he's German and he doesn't look particularly remarkable and isn't particularly an emotional character, whereas someone like Buffon is, do you think there's an element of that?
I think Buffon possibly looked and looks more physically impressive and more glamorous.
Someone like Iker Casillas burst on the scene as a very young goalkeeper as well.
Yeah, I don't think look, my take is this. I think when I saw this question and we're going to have to talk about it today, I started thinking about who the best goalkeeper I've seen is, and I think it probably is Manuel Neuer. I think he probably is the best goalkeeper I've seen. I think if you look at, it's very difficult to compare between eras and very difficult to talk about players that have come along before you really started watching football in a meaningful way. So I'm not professional to do that. I'm not going to try and compare him to great goalkeepers of the past. But in terms of the goalkeepers I've seen, for precisely the reason that Andy said there, he can do everything.
Yeah.
His presence was ridiculous. He could, every single area of goalkeeping you wanted to cover, he could cover. I personally think he's, in his prime, was a better goalkeeper than Iker Casillas and better than Buffon, who are possibly the two other candidates. And I do think he was the guy who's most responsible for, regardless of your guys, in my view, outliers that come along a little before when the game was quite different, and arguably at a different level as well, a lower level. Neuer is more responsible for bringing the goalkeeping game on than any other goalkeeper that's ever played the game that I've seen. And I think he deserves to be treated in that conversation. And we always talk about this, and it's very difficult to properly assess who the number one standout person is, apart from the few obvious examples.
Yeah.
So you want to be talking about being part of the conversation. And Manuel Neuer is the strongest candidate for, in my view, the best goalkeeper I've seen.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I just think that your average person would say Buffon or maybe Casillas or maybe somebody else.
I ain't your average person, so I don't care.
Indeed, but with Neuer, for some reason, I think he is slightly underrated.
Might well be underrated.
Maybe.
Well, you've got to drew.
Hence, the question is relevant from Frankie, and I think that's why it's an enjoyable one to tackle. Because clearly, if it was, does Gigi Buffon rank among the best goalkeepers? I think everyone would totally agree with that.
But if you compare him to his contemporaries, he's enjoying a better end to his career.
Yes, he is. Yeah,
an end to his career more on his terms than either Buffon or Casillas, who are probably the two others from his generation did. I think what Luke was touching on about how influential he's being, when we're talking about someone being all time, that's really important as well. So defining his own space, goalkeeping the way he wanted to. I mean, the thing that, in terms of him being influential, the thing that I always remember is when Germany went to the 2014 World Cup, they go out there, they have this incredible beachside getaway in Bahia, which is where they stay and where they kind of chill when they're not playing the games. But the thing that I always think about is the players who don't play during a World Cup or European Championship. And one of those, third choice goalkeeper, Roman Weidenfeller, very, very good goalkeeper, very accomplished goalkeeper for Dortmund. And of course, in recent memory, beaten Bayern to 2 successive Bundesligas. Now, he spends all this time in Bayer training with Neuer, but not playing.
And he knows he's not going to play.
No, exactly. But Neuer gets inside his head so much. And Weidenfeller's a very strong character that at the start of the next season, which turns out to be Klopp's last season for Dortmund and doesn't go particularly well, especially at the start, Weidenfeller makes loads of mistakes because he's kind of got Stockholm syndrome from Neuer. He comes out and he's always been a goalkeeper that's been on his line or around his 6-yard box. And he thinks, yeah, maybe I should be dribbling the ball out. Maybe I should come out and meet strikers. And it all goes horribly wrong because only Neuer can do Neuer.
Yeah.
The conversation is Casillas, Buffon and Neuer.
Well, interestingly, so have you heard of a wonderful organisation called the International Federation of Football History and Statistics?
Yeah,
very, very enjoyable. I'm sure a lot of people know them quite well. They've got some lovely stuff on there, and I think they're pretty good with what they do. And they have, since 1987, they have, through all their methods and so on, as you could imagine, with a name like that, they're pretty studious. Who is the best goalkeeper of the year? And since 1987, they've been doing this. And the 3 goalkeepers that have won the award 5 times are indeed Casillas, Buffon, and Neuer. Now, I understand there was great goalkeepers before 1987, but that's what they've got. And it's interesting because of the 3 goalkeepers, you think, well, actually, who would be the best ones? And I think you guys have said it that Neuer definitely would have been seen as doing the good solid meat and potatoes kind of stuff as a goalkeeper, but could play with his feet. You don't think of Buffon playing with his feet really, do you? And perhaps not so much with Casillas, although he's obviously part of those Spain side, so he could. I think he probably is the strongest goalkeeper of the 3.
But Casillas didn't have the presence of Neuer.
No,
he's
didn't.
Not as big as Neuer.
Indeed.
No, the thing is, because Neuer can do all the other things, it's never said that Neuer is a better shot stopper than either of those.
Exactly. That's the sort of thing people resort to when they don't think the other things. All goalkeepers are good shot stoppers, really.
Just what you guys said minutes ago, Luke, is for those reasons that Neuer, I think, is just ahead of those guys. Which, he is in the 21st century. Certainly, if someone said he's been the best goalkeeper this century, I don't think anybody would or should argue with that.
Buffon's never won the Champions League either, so.
He had a good go.
You have a bin for a heart.
I'm just saying.
3 World Cup winners, though.
It's true. They are all World Cup winners.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, look, as you say, he's very much in the conversation.
I'm not trying to denigrate the other 2. I just think Neuer's the best.
He will always be in the conversation.
Thanks for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're feeling extra generous, why don't you like this video? Why don't you like this video?